At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Phillies Talk podcast. Leading into Game 3 of the World Series between the Phils and Astros. I'm Corey Seidman. He's Jim Salisbury. It's Halloween, and the Phillies have Noah Syndergaard on the mound in this pivotal Game 3. Jim, this game could very well end up swinging the series. The Phillies had the momentum in Game 1. The Astros seize it back in Game 2. The Phils have had all this success at home in front of the crazy fans at Citizens Bank Park. But there seems to be no denying that the Astros have the starting pitching advantage going into this Game 3. Initially, we expected to see Ranger Suarez in this start, but because Suarez was used in relief in Game 1, the nod goes to Noah Syndergaard. What are you expecting tonight out of Syndergaard, who went through the lineup once the last time we saw him make a start?
I don't really know what to expect. He is experienced in the postseason. He's made a World Series start before as a rookie with the Mets back in 2015. In fact, he started Game 3 for the Mets. He starts Game 3 for the Phillies tonight. And Lance McCullers is another guy with World Series experience and a lot of postseason experience. And both, veterans of arm troubles. Syndergaard's not the same guy he was when he was a young pitcher. He's a young fireballer. He's more of a, quote unquote pitcher now. Has to finesse it a little bit, rely on command, and they're going to need that command to be right there tonight. And that's, to me, a big question because he hasn't pitched a lot lately. And to have that command, you need reps and you need sharpness. And so that's where I wonder where he's going to be. But I'm sure he, if there ever is the time to rise to the occasion, this is it, much like he did against Atlanta in that clinching game of the NLDS, 3 innings before handing off to the bullpen. That's what they're going to try to do again, though they may push him here a little bit because they're going to need possibly a little more length from him because you don't know how long Ranger can go in Game 4. So that bullpen is going to be a huge factor here the next 2 nights. And this is kind of the price you pay, or Rob Thompson is paying, for being aggressive in Game 1. He went to the bullpen early in the middle innings with Alvarado. He went to Ranger Suarez in another big situation later in that game with Yordan Alvarez coming up and then Tucker 2 batters later. So he went to pretty much he feels like his 2 most dependable lefties in big situations in Game 1, and he got the win, which, you got to be aggressive in a short series. But now they pay the price for that aggressiveness a little bit because Ranger Suarez not available to start Game 3. He has to push back a day. Pardon me. And this is a huge Game 3 because, as you mentioned, it's a huge swing game. It's 1-1, and whoever wins this one, I see a real decided tip in momentum. So it would be great to have, your legitimately third best starter on the mound in Ranger Suarez, but they don't have him because, like I said, they went for the juggler in Game 1. So now you have to hoping Syndergaard, who could have some rust, who had struggles down the stretch, who's not the same guy he used to be, who was picked up to give you innings late in the season, but not necessarily projected as a member of your postseason roster. Or your postseason rotation, I should say. You have to hope that he goes out and pitches a whale of a game, 3 innings, 4 innings, whatever. You'll take whatever you can get from him as long as he's effective. So, just not really sure how to feel about this one. But it would be, the bats are going to have to come through as well. They're going to have to, if there's ever a night to get some runs, it's this one. So, we'll see what happens. They will have a raucous home crowd behind them, but it's a huge night. and they're putting a lot on Noah Syndergaard's plate, in my opinion.
Well, coming off of game one, you had to kind of applaud Rob Thompson's his all-out approach to winning game one, bringing in Ranger Suarez, bringing in Jose Alvarado in the fifth inning of that game to try to make sure that they won it. But in retrospect, if you knew that it was going to push Suarez back to game four, if you knew it was going to create this situation, that conversation might have been a little bit different. And something that loomed large early in this series is that, if the Phillies had been able to really trust Brad Hand, a left-handed specialist, to pitch in the fifth or seventh inning of that game, they might not have needed Suarez. If they trusted Kyle Gibson, who faded down the stretch, they might not be leaning on Syndergaard, who wasn't expected to be in the playoff rotation. So the way that those two guys finished has already kind of played a role in this World Series.
No question. And I'm sure the minute they went to Ranger in game one, they knew they weren't going to have him in game three. But that's in a short series, you go for the juggler. And I mean, your point is tremendous. I mean, they can't trust Hand and they can't trust Gibson. I mean, this is a team that has won 10 ball games in the postseason without a fourth starter. And you don't always need a fourth starter in the postseason, but there are times you need them. And when you need them, it's nice to have one, and they don't have one. Clearly, Gibson is somebody that they don't feel comfortable going to. And, his performance at the end of the season tells you why. And, Hand as well, that they had to employ this strategy by using Alvarado early and Ranger a couple of innings later in game one. So every piece, it's like, building a Swiss watch. Every piece has a purpose, and every piece has to fit together, and every piece has to do its job. And when it doesn't, you got to make adjustments, and there's always an after effect. And that's what we're seeing here tonight in game three. There's a byproduct. There's an after effect. And that's the reason they're going to have to essentially go to a bullpen game here in game three of the World Series. It feels very patchwork for a team that's gotten this far, but it's the way Rob Thompson and Caleb Cotham and Brian Kaplan and Dave Lundquist and their front office and their analytics people, it's the way they have to run this thing because they don't have that depth in their rotation.
Speaking of teams that are just crushing it right now, how about Team Toyota in Langhorne, Princeton, and Glen Mills? New Toyota inventory is finally starting to come back, and yet they're still not charging over MSRP. And with over 200 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. Plus, their service centers and body shops will keep your vehicle safe all season long. You are always the MVP at Team Toyota. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Princeton, or Glen Mills.
Well, one advantage that they've had for much of the season that they've used in the playoffs has been the 1-2 punch in the rotation of Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Both guys got hit around in Houston, and there has to be some concern about Wheeler. The fact that he got hit in the knee area by a line drive last week, the fact that his velocity was down in this last start, not down considerably compared to the regular season. In the regular season, his fastball averaged 95.9 miles per hour. It was 95.6 in Houston, but where that stuck out is that in his previous playoff starts, he had been hitting 98, 99 early in games, and he had been averaging better than 97 miles per hour. He hit 99 almost a dozen times in the NLCS in the World Series start, hitting 97 3 times and topping out there. Left too many balls over the middle of the plate. Dusty Baker had actually said going into game 2 that the Astros knew that they needed to be aggressive against Wheeler. They left too many pitches in the middle of the plate in game 1, and that was going to be their game plan. And Wheeler said afterward, that's how everybody attacks me. They try to jump on a fastball early, hoping something catches too much plate. That was the case. This is now shaky for the Phillies moving forward. The fact that their starting pitching strength is in question.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Wheeler is a guy who leans out his fastball, and he can usually beat you with it, and he couldn't beat guys with it because he didn't locate it, and he didn't have great pop on it. And this is just another reason why there's just this uncertain feel going into game 3. It just feels like there's been a shift in momentum in this series because the Phillies are going to go with a bullpen game in game 3 for reasons we've articulated. They don't have a fourth guy they can trust, and they had to flip-flop, and they don't have a lefty they can trust in the bullpen, so they had to go to Ranger. So there's so much mixing and matching, and they're going to be leaning on their bullpen in game 3 and 4. And then you behind that you have Nola and Wheeler and you're going to need to win this World Series. If you're going to win this World Series, you're going to need them to pitch well. And, Nola has pitched poorly his last 2 times out, and Wheeler is coming off a difficult outing. And there's, these sirens all over the place about Wheeler with his velocity being down because he's a guy who relies on that. He locate and beat you with the fastball. And he couldn't do that. And there's the knee, but, there's also the elbow. He missed a month late in the season with elbow inflammation, forearm, elbow inflammation, whatever you want to call it, tendonitis. And he came back from that, was throwing actually harder, but wasn't going deep into games. I mean, you wonder if it's completely flushed out of there. You wonder if it's affecting him. So he says he's fine on both counts, the knee and the elbow, and I don't expect him to own up to anything. Having covered him for 3 years, he's not the type of guy that owns up to stuff. He's just not the type of guy who makes excuses. He's a kind of just a old school, rub dirt on it competitor. He's not going to let you know if he's hurt. And he's pitched through it. So, but I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on. The condition of his arm, because, like I said, the evidence is there in the drop in velo and the fact that he spent a month on the IL. So, they're going to need both those guys if they're going to win this World Series. So, in my opinion, so that's another complication to this pitching puzzle as they head into Game 3.
Well, as you said, they need the bats, could step up here and offset some of that pitching concern. In Game 1, the Phillies made that big comeback from down 5-0 against Justin Verlander. It was a spot where many people were probably doubting they had another comeback left in them, but lo and behold, they got right back against Verlander, scoring in the 4th and 5th inning to tie things up, and then JT Realmuto winning it in extra innings with the home run. Bryce Harper hasn't really made his mark yet on this World Series. 2 games in, he did have 2 hits in the first game. But Nick Castellanos and Alec Bohm had the 2 hardest hit balls of the night late in Game 2. Realmuto, Schwarber, Harper have had some good swings here. That's what needs to happen. Especially in Games 3 and 4. Lance McCullers shut this offense down pretty much the night that Aaron Nola faced the Astros earlier in October. And with McCullers going, and then I'm assuming Christian Javier, the tough right-hander in Game 4, 2 more tests for the Phillies bats, but they've stepped up against some good pitching all throughout the season.
Yeah, that game they faced McCullers, Schwarber hit a first pitch home run. So you will see Lance McCullers will be very focused in that first at bat against Kyle Schwarber. And then the Phillies got nothing the rest of the night. He has a great breaking ball. He's a guy who, keeps the ball down, which pretty much a must, I think, in Citizens Bank Park. He's tough, man. He's tough, but the bats are really going to have to show up. They're going to have to, much like they did with Verlander in Game 1 in, I want to say, maybe the 3rd and 4th innings. I have to go through my score sheet, but they really ran up his pitch count. It'd be good if they could run up this guy's pitch count and get him tired, get him fatigued, and get him the heck out of there. And then if he makes a mistake over the plate, pound him, get some base runners, get into the stretch. It's kind of the same way you try to beat any pitcher. Have good at bats. We've seen this Phillies lineup very, very capable of doing that. And I think early runs are a must. I always do. But, get this crowd into it. Not that they're going to be into it, but, let those Astros know that, they're going to have to face that 11th man. But these Astros are very, very used to playing in hostile environments. I mean, because they're sort of baseball's most hated team for the cheating scandal of, I guess it was 5 years ago now, but, the after effects of that. And there were even some storylines connecting back to that in Game 2 with Valdez, rubbing his hair and his uni and his hand, and who knows. He may be just trying to put stuff in the back of people's head. But it certainly has added an interesting subplot here. But they are used to playing in hostile environments. And I just don't think it's going to bother them that much. But maybe we'll see.
The Astros have played 89 playoff games since 2015, the most in the majors, so this is nothing new to them. It's funny. You start to look at some of like the postseason numbers and the careers of some of these young Astros. Kyle Tucker is a young player. He already has 175 plate appearances in the playoffs just based on how successful that team has been. And wow, did he have a big Game 1 against the Phillies. Jim, just talking about Framber Valdez, whether he was using stuff or not, he was nasty in game two. I mean, that curveball, the Phillies couldn't touch it. They knew it was coming because he had been throwing it more than 40% of the time in the playoffs compared to 28% in the regular season. So they knew that they were going to see an uptick in curveballs, still couldn't do much with it. That trademark sinker he have plays well off of it, gets a ton of ground balls, misses bats. They're going to see him again in game 6, which just reinforces the need to make some hay here in games 3 and 4.
No question. And McCullers has a great breaking ball as well. So, yeah, the offense, because the fact that we're kind of seeing the underbelly of their pitching rotation, they need to support it with run support. And that's going to be a tough thing, to come by with McCullers. So, I mean, have good at bats, try to get his pitch count up, try to get him out of there. If he makes a mistake, over the plate, you got to pound it, and you got to hope there's runners on base when you do.
Well, there's a lot of positivity right now in the city between the Eagles' undefeated start, the Union advancing in the playoffs, the Phillies playing as well as they have. It's Halloween. It's going to be crazy at Citizens Bank Park tonight. Are you expecting it to be like even a different level from the NLCS? Having been through these playoffs? I
thought it was pretty electric for the NLCS. And to me, it rivaled some of the games from 08 and 09. I think the loudest, I ever heard that place was when, Lidge strikes out Hinsky. I mean, that was unbelievable. But when Jimmy Rollins had that double against Broxton, the walk-off, a year later, right, 09, that was amazing. It if it had a roof, it would have blew the roof off it. So it's a great time for Philadelphia sports with the Eagles, and you mentioned the Union, and it's Halloween. There's already a festive atmosphere. It's like, St. Patty's Day in October. People are going to be ready for this one. I expect that place to be, very loud. And, that's why I think it's important they capitalize on it early with some offense. And if it's possible to rattle playoff-tested Astros, give it a shot. Maybe this is the place that can do it. But generally, I think professional athletes feed off this stuff positively. I mean, I know there was the whole thing with Bert Hooton in 77, I think it was, how he got rattled by the fans at the Vet. I don't know how much that happens anymore. But what the heck? Give it a shot.
Well, the Astros are going to be trying to quiet that crowd early. It seems like Jose Altuve swung at the first pitch in every at-bat he's had in this series. There should be a little bit of fear that they woke up a sleeping giant, the Phillies, because Altuve was 4 for 37 in the playoffs, hitting 108. But then in game 2, jumped on Zach Wheeler for a double in the first inning, ended up hitting 3 balls extremely hard on the night. And if he gets going atop that lineup with all that you have to worry about with Alvarez and Bregman and Tucker to follow, it's going to be very difficult.
And if he gets going, he is going. He is going. He swung the bat with authority in game 2. And it was only a matter of time. This is a guy with 3 batting titles, 300 hitter lifetime. He's just he's a great, great hitter and a great, great player. And Alvarez in the middle is scary. So scary, the Phillies had to go to Jose Alvarado and Ranger in game 1 to get a win. And that Astros lineup, you're going to have to really pitch well against them. And you're going to have to really, really put it in good spots. So this is such a pivotal game. I'm not going to say the team who wins it is going to win the World Series, but I think you're going to just be feeling a huge momentum swing by whoever wins this game. And if the Phillies can come out of it with a win, I really think they can feed off it in game 4. I mean, it was losing game 2 was, hey, I don't think anybody reasonably expected the Phillies to go down there and win 2 games. Tough environment, great team, Houston Astros. But after winning game 1, you were in a great situation because you had your ace on the mound in Zach Wheeler. And if you could go down there and somehow get that game 2 and come back up 2-0 with 3 games in this place, I mean, you are sitting pretty. So to lose that game and it was very difficult on the Phillies. And to not get Wheeler's A game was very difficult because it's tied up the series. And made Game 3 a huge swing game when you don't have, you don't have the top of your rotation or taking the mound that night. You don't have one of your top starters taking the mound that night. So they need Noah Syndergaard. And he's a competitor, and he's a proud competitor, and maybe he goes out and dazzles and pitches the game of his life. They're certainly going to need him as close to as he can to be on top of his game.
Syndergaard made 2 pretty good starts against the Astros earlier this season. They went just 5 for 33 against him, hitting below 200. When the Phillies traded for Syndergaard, Jim, one of the storylines I expected at least to see play out throughout the second half was the running game against him, because it had just been a weakness. Base stealers were 25 for 26 against him with the Angels. That's been a weakness he's had throughout his career, has never really been able to hold runners, but yet with the Phillies, it hasn't been a problem. In fact, 12 of the last 15 games he's appeared in, he has not allowed a stolen base. This is an Astros team that has a lot of guys who can move between Altuve and Pena and Tucker, some guys at the bottom as well. Do you think that the reason this has changed with Syndergaard is because of the presence of JT Realmuto? This is going to be a pretty important thing leading into tonight.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, Zach Wheeler has talked about that, how the presence of JT has helped him in executing pitches with men on base, because he knows he doesn't have to speed up and rush his delivery as part of an attempt to control the running game. He knows he can, stay in his mechanics throughout the pitch, execute the pitch, because JT has the running game. And I think there's probably a certain amount to that, amount of that in Syndergaard, but also the Phillies pitching brain trust goes to work on that. They see things analytically they can work on, and then in the bullpen they work on that as well. So I think it's a complete effort there from coaching down to on the field with the way JT can handle the running game as well. That helps the pitchers pitch, make better pitches with runners on base and control running game in that regard.
All right, well, here we go. The World Series returns to Citizens Bank Park. It is Noah Syndergaard against Lance McCullers Jr. in Game 3. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be some masks out at Citizens Bank Park. It's going to be a little weirder than usual even. But we're all looking forward to that electric atmosphere. And the guys, after Game 2, to a man, we're excited to come back home. Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins just referencing how much the Phillies have been able to thrive off the crowd, the confidence that they've given them, the impact it's made in these late Phillies comebacks, because this team has found a bunch of different ways to win in the playoffs. Now they just need to find 3 more. Thanks for listening to the Phillies Talk podcast. We'll catch you tomorrow morning.